There we go. Hi, this is Sara Remke with What's Next with Sara, and I'm honored to be sitting here today with John Friedlander, author, teacher. Full disclosure, he's been my teacher for, hard to believe, over 15 years.
Wow.
Right? Isn't that incredible?
Boy, time flies.
Yeah, so you're a trained lawyer, you're a scholar, you're an author, you're a husband. Anything else you would add to that?
I don't think so.
Okay, yeah. So my podcast starts with the question.
I have cats who may show up during the podcast.
Cat lover. We can for sure put in cat lover.
Yes.
We start with the question, facing life as it is, or meeting life as it is, or being open to life as it is. And I think that this is something that I've learned from you that has been incredibly helpful in my life. I would even say when I first met you, my life was kind of a mess. So I know that what you do works. And I just thought, could you talk about that a little bit? You know, interestingly enough, I got your book in the mail yesterday, and your preface is really a lot about facing life or being open to life as it is.
Yes, in fact, that was the original title of the book. My friend and publisher, I said my cat would be here. He's getting ready to come up now.
Good.
So hopefully he will get in my lap. My friend and publisher pulled all this together, in part because he was interested in the material, and in part because he's a publisher, but he really deserves a writing credit. So we were titling the book Open to Life as It Is. And Richard Grosinger is the one who did this, and he has an imprint with inner traditions, and they're very professional, and they rightly said, you know, who know what this is about. And I studied personally with the late Jane Roberts back in 1974 for a large part of 1974. And ever since it's probably exactly 50 years within a week of being introduced to the Seth material.
Wow.
And so I feel very fortunate, and my studies of the Seth material and with friends has really been a center of my life. I think pretty nearly most of us thought that Seth's central message, that you create your own reality according to your conscious beliefs, meant that all you had to do was make some changes with your beliefs, and to play with a phrase from the songwriter Leonard Cohen, who said, love is not a victory march. We thought it was going to turn life into a victory march.
Right.
And it doesn't. And there are profound and deep reasons why it doesn't. I was listening to a famous opera singer on the radio today. She has a program, and she she signed off with a statement that life is like music. It has high notes and low notes. And if all the notes were the same, it would be pretty boring.
That's really nice.
So it's not like I'm the only one who knows that that life involves highs and lows. But to understand this in the context of a spiritual journey, I think has some subtleties to it, and particularly, well, so they're kind of two sides, and I think a proper understanding of what Seth was about is a third way. Early on, someplace I remember reading in Seth, he said that you're going to be attracted to this out of a misunderstanding of what this is really about. And I think, boy, weren't we really?
Yeah.
So many people think that since you create your own reality, that you can turn life into a tic-tac-toe game. Life is meant to be challenging. It's meant, one channel being I studied with had this wonderful statement. Everyone wants to be spontaneous. They just don't want to be surprised. Well,
I understand that.
life it's an essential aspect of life in the human dimensions, that it contains tensions and contradictions, and those tensions and contradictions are absolutely intrinsic to human experience, and probably most non-human experience. But it certainly, at the very least, is intrinsic to human experience. And tensions and contradictions are going to generate surprises.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to generate challenges. And instead of getting, of course, you want to get better at creating your reality, and you can. But when you engage life as it is, and when you learn how to be open to life as it is, with highs and lows, you're more likely to be better at it. Thich Nhat Hanh, who recently died, said, when you know how to suffer, you suffer less. Mm. And so from the Sethian point of view, we incarnate not to become enlightened. I'll address that in a minute. But we incarnate to explore the tensions and contradictions and the beauties that can emerge from that. Mm. That can't be explored in the unobstructed space of non-dual awareness, that the soul is always and already a part of. So we didn't incarnate out of ignorance, which is the usual Eastern story. We incarnated into ignorance so that we could get surprised in the same way that most of us, if we're watching a murder mystery, don't skip ahead to the end.
Yeah.
We voluntarily jump into ignorance because it generates wonderful stories.
Mm.
And I don't remember the name of the poet, but it's quite a famous line from a poem where she says that, and I'm paraphrasing, the world is not made of atoms, it's made of stories.
Hmm.
So to play with that, the world is a good life is not made out of conquering life. It's not made out of perfecting life. It's made out of engaging life.
Mm.
Of course you want to get more skillful, and you can. There are
Right.
all kinds of ways, like becoming psychic, the way that you've cultivated for at
Right.
least 15 years now. I think maybe most importantly is for people skills is your ability to listen and to pay attention and
Mhm.
then to express yourself. So the central metaphor that I use for what life is about is engaging in a conversation.
Right.
And it's not so many people say, take my course and everything will work out. And it does work. I think
Maybe.
uh, but I had some woman sobbing to me that she'd taken some course and she'd expected to be making 7 figures and she wasn't making 6 figures.
Yeah.
It sort of, that's fine. If you make 7 figures, if you're happy making 30,000 a year,
Yeah.
uh, money is important, and you can become much more skillful in making money.
Mhm.
But the main event is making meaning,
Right.
and you can find yourself both making more money and being happier if you focus primarily on making meaning and growing skills and cultivating your ability to communicate, which starts with your ability to listen.
And when you're saying making meaning, are you suggesting that people find their own meaning in whatever situation they're in? That's what you mean by making meaning?
Yes. Thanks for that question. It's an excellent question. I'm turning up your sound here. So you can make meaning out of any event. My teacher, Lewis Bostwick, who set up the Berkeley Psychic Institute, I studied with him back in 1973. He used to say, have fun And if you're not having fun, have fun not having fun.
Mhm.
And over the decades, I've really come to appreciate that statement. There will be times in probably everyone's life where you're not having fun.
Mhm.
But if you dig into it, if you use it to grow or to find meaning or to learn more about the human condition, as you try to cope with that, even the worst sorts of things, you find yourself making meaning out of it. You find yourself getting fascinated in coping with the situation.
Mhm.
And even if you would choose not to have that experience at all, you can still have a kind of fun and at least a kind of emerging fascination with your experience. Um, I, the man who wrote All in the Family,
Lear, Norman.
uh, Norman Lear.
Mhm.
He wrote a book. I just bought it. I'm just getting started with it, and the title of the book is "Even This I Get to Experience." And his explanation of how he came up with the title was he'd made all this money as the most successful
Yeah.
television writer and producer. And apparently, a decade or more later, he was going bankrupt. He was afraid he was going to lose his house. He'd made some disastrous
Wow.
decisions. And he's talking to his, I think it's his son-in-law. And at some point in the conversation, he says to his son-in-law, even this I get to experience.
Yeah, it's interesting because I do feel that one of the things that I've gotten to experience of working with you for so long is that, first of all, I see you grow and change. And then I know that I've grown and changed. And I think of so many people who talk about their teacher and it's like this fixed thing. Or maybe you take these courses to make 7 figures in 6 weeks or whatever that is, and then that's it and it's over. But when you work with people over the long term, you get to see not only like, oh, I didn't used to be able to do that, and now I can do that. And it creates something really different, I think really different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the meaning of life. So in one of my introductions to one of the books, we start off, and I often start off by lots of New Agers know the phrase "you create your own reality according to your conscious beliefs." Jane Roberts channeling Seth is the one who originated that.
Mhm.
And it was a profound and central part of Seth's message, though again, people misunderstood that to say that life would be victory.
Yeah.
But we create our own reality. It's too complicated to control.
Mhm.
I might sit down and play a game of chess. I made every move. I had an intention with every move. If I'd made better moves, I could have won the game. But the game is too complicated to control the outcome. The best player in the world doesn't win every game.
Yeah.
Life is much richer and more complex. And so the stance that I encourage people and that my guides encourage people to take is of course you want what you want and you go after what you want.
Mhm.
But getting what you want doesn't necessarily make you happy.
Right.
And not getting what you want doesn't necessarily make you unhappy.
Right.
Happiness is not an outcome. Happiness is a skill. It's a skill in finding the richness in life as it is,
Mhm.
and throwing yourself into life with passion and enthusiasm and growing skill and authentic kindness and generosity. And if you can do that, you'll be happy. There'll be painful times.
Right.
There'll be times where you're fabulously successful. But most importantly, you'll be happy. You will have found meaning.
Nice. I think there is something to, which I didn't grow up with, that ability to look at the things that didn't work and to learn from them and go forward with that. I don't think enough of us really take the time to, okay, that didn't work. Why didn't that work? What's next? It's important. Yeah. Which brings me to this morning, I was brushing my teeth and I sort of began to a little bit glimmer this thing that you talk about, all things change, all things expand in all directions. So let me know if I'm on the right track here. So I was thinking, what happens is if we're working in the now, we're actually changing our past because our past is what brought us to the now. And if we're working in the now, we're actually changing our future because we're changing what's now and what our future will be. And then I was trying to think like, so is this related to karma and how we change karma?
It is. It's even more rambunctious than that. Because things change sideways too through probabilities.
That's right.
So, and they change from future lives, from past lives, and what you do changes your soul, and what your soul does changes you. So the phrase I use is all consciousness, whether it's my cat. So my cat is part of multiple consciousnesses. He doesn't think of himself as just a cat. I mean, I see just a cat because that's the focus that human beings have in 2022. We see time as being, like on a railroad line. There's a past, there's a present, there's the future, and that's the way it's set up to generate the stories that fill our attention and that we engage with so much passion and with more or less skill.
Mm-hmm.
But my cat doesn't experience life like that. He experiences life as a cat and as a thunderstorm and as the deva that oversees hundreds of cats or thousands of cats. So his consciousness is very fluid.
Mm.
So all consciousness and his consciousness expands in multiple directions. Now, this is so important for human beings because the Eastern story is that you incarnate out of ignorance, and that the whole purpose of incarnation is to eventually become enlightened.
Right.
And that's not the Sethian story. The Sethian story is all consciousness expands in all directions. And you don't have to become enlightened. And we don't even advise people to do that. I mean, I know some people who are on that journey and they're doing it. And that's an okay dharma, but I argue that that's a Piscean dharma, and that eventually in the Aquarian age, we'll be able to have a group consciousness where we're part of a greater whole, and we bring our uniqueness to that, and we share in emergent and larger consciousnesses that do things that humans can't do. And then some aspects of our consciousness will be dual and some non-dual. But for now, since all as human beings, since all consciousness expands in all directions, not only is your soul eternal, but Sara is eternal. Now, I like to joke that death changes people, but it doesn't obliterate the Sara uniqueness out of you. Now, when the Buddhists particularly say the Tibetans look at what happens to you after death, they see things break up and things go in all that and in multiple directions. And they use that analysis to say that you have to give up grasping your individual your sense of being an independent consciousness, and that you have some unchanging essence. Now, Seth would agree that you have no unchanging essence. Everything is part of everything else, but it's actually the change that lets Sara be eternal, not just as a soul. I have this image of the ordinary idea of reincarnation is that Sara dies, and it's like she goes to a junkyard, and the soul strips that personality for parts, and then there's no Sara left. And so what does Sara care about in future incarnations? But actually, Sara, in ways that are different from this physicalization of Sara, but not so different that if I meet up with you after death, and some of those directions that you've gone into, I'll say, Sara, and you say, oh yeah, there's John. And we have this individual, now your consciousness will be much more fluid, you'll be less grasping, you'll go through further changes, you will participate in ways that are too complicated to try to explain in the time frame that we have. You'll participate in future incarnations, but in each one at the end of it, you'll be Sara, only wiser.
Would you, sometimes we just meet people that we just kind of know. Do you think that's that personality that's recognized through the soul or something like that?
Sure.
Yeah. Because didn't Seth talk about the personality of the soul or something like, or I thought he talked about something.
Well, I mean, I think Seth Speaks is subtitled The Eternal Validity of the Soul.
Okay.
But in there, he gives hints as to something that's quite a bit more shocking than the eternal validity of the soul, which is the eternal validity of a personality that expands in all directions.
And that's what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. And in fact, so a lot of us, excuse me, are getting old. I'm 74 years old.
Yeah.
I have people who, I've recently hooked up with a dear friend from college, and he was saying, I'm 74 and I'm in good health. And he said, for 74. And he is.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of us are. But I've kind of forgotten where I was going with this.
With the ongoing life of the personality.
We're going to die.
Yeah.
Sooner or later. I know what it. So I was talking to someone who might be facing a terminal disease, maybe not. But again, we're all facing mortality. Yeah. And she said, well, I have stuff that isn't finished. And I found myself saying, there are no deadlines. Even death is not a deadline.
Nice.
Because if Sarah has things that are undone, it isn't just Sarah's soul that completes them. Yeah, Sarah's soul is interested and has its own take on that. But Sarah, in one way or another, in ways that are meaningful to Sarah, completes them.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
It's really cool. Wow. It just opens up like a whole new world, doesn't it? When you begin to feel that and see that, all of a sudden you just feel like it just brings, I guess that's the joy that it brings, right?
Yeah, well, a lot of people intentionally use the idea of the deadline to force themselves to focus and to bring more intensity into the moment. And there's the fear that if you really have an infinite amount of time, you won't take advantage of the moment. Of course, it's important to learn how to take advantage of the moment. But if the reason you're taking advantage of the moment is because you think that there's a deadline, it's going to be too hard to be balanced and open and playful.
Didn't Seth talk in one of his books about well, I think you touched on this. The reason we incarnate is because everything's sort of easy on the other side, right? We're fluid and communicating, and then it was that challenge of being here in physical bodies that made something interesting. Or
I'd say it a little differently. There are, even the soul has tensions and contradictions.
Mm-hmm.
But in that that nearly frictionless space, it can't really understand and engage those tensions and contradictions. So in the structure of time and space and gravity and things like that, those tensions and contradictions come to bear. And so the soul can explore. Let me analogize it to playing tennis. You artificially set up rules to make it hard. There's a net. It's only allowed to bounce once. And you have someone who's forcing you to run after the ball and make it. And in doing so, you learn not just about your physical abilities, but your emotional and spiritual abilities.
Yes.
Whereas so in a sense, let's say instead of playing tennis, you could just sit in a chair and be blissed out all the time, which is not what the soul is doing. But let's say you could. That might be nice, but that doesn't teach you what playing tennis on a hot day with bugs teaches you about experience. And you don't have the same kinds of story. Now, the soul itself, the soul isn't just looking in on you. The soul is so enormous, it goes in so many directions, and it in itself has, oodles of lifetimes and probabilities, and then it's part of larger consciousnesses and smaller consciousness and sideways consciousnesses. So it is able to focus exquisitely on all of those infinite things at once in a way that those of us in time and space just simply can't imagine.
And of course, what I think of when you're talking about all this is the boundaries, right? The boundaries of the tennis game that force you to learn certain things, and the boundaries of time and space. That's a cool connection.
Yes.
And when we have better boundaries and we bump up against that, that creates a different kind of growth.
Yes. The spiritual system that you've been involved in for 15 years, the psychic system, we place our psychic exploration primarily in what I call the personal world.
Mm-hmm.
The natural realm of ordinary human experiences. And I was talking to someone who's really a wonderful spiritual seeker, very competent, capable, wide-ranging. And my sense was, and I certainly have seen this in other people, that there is a kind of spiritual approach to life where the hope is that you can become so impeccable that you never have to have a difficult conversation.
Sounds familiar.
You're so loving or whatever, that you're always perfectly understood, that nobody gets angry at you, that you don't get angry at anyone else. I like to say that anger is a delusion. Every instance of anger is a delusion. But the idea that you can be fully engaged in the human adventure and never get angry is also a delusion.
Yeah.
So you hit your anger, you engage your anger, you work your anger, you have difficult conversations more skillfully year by year, and you get angry less often. You more skillful when you get angry, but the spiritual journey, the psychic journey that we're on, places most of our attention in the personal or in the realm, not just of anger, of course,
Right.
of ambition, of joy, of the pleasure of having a cat in your lap,
Mm-hmm.
of going for a walk, all those things.
Yeah. Yeah. And somehow we've chosen to be here at this time.
Yes.
We've chosen this life, these challenges, sometimes we get maybe unexpected challenges.
Yes.
And so what we're here, ideally, if we can keep our balance and to be open to life as it is and what's coming our way. What does that exactly mean? That means keeping your balance. It means saying hello to all those emotions.
Keeping your balance. If you lose your balance, finding it more quickly than you would have found it a year ago.
Okay, yep. And understanding that there's something greater at play that you maybe won't know for years to come.
Right.
And whether that's something that's karmic or something that affects your future or came from your past or multiple dimensions of your personality, sometimes we just won't know what that is.
Yeah, and you can never have a final understanding of any experience. It may very well be that I'll give you an example. There are some readings that I did 30 years ago that I was very proud of, that I cringe
Yeah.
now. But I'll tell you another story, which is kind of funny, of something I did that I cringed for about 20 years. And then, so when I was a freshman at Duke, we were having a party in the dorm I was in.
Mm-hmm.
And this kid comes running up and he's so excited and he says, I had 16 purple Jesuses. Now, purple Jesus apparently was 180 proof alcohol, or maybe, yeah, it was 180 proof alcohol with a little fruit juice.
Yikes.
And he'd had 16 of those. And he said, I feel great. I could do 20 push-ups right now. And I looked at him and I said, do it. And there was something kind of mean about it. And he just vomited all over the place.
Sure.
So, about 20 years later, I started reading about frat boys. This wasn't a fraternity, but, about frat boys dying from
Right.
drinking. I think psychically he picked up that I was the guy who was going to tell him to do that. And he may have saved his life by finding my action.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah.
Really bad about that until, it still was kind of nasty and I'm not proud of that, but I do feel like I was part of something. So you never know.
Right.
With finally what's up.
Yeah. That's what makes life exciting, huh? Well, anything else you want to say, or we're kind of, our time is here, but
I don't think so. I do. We have started a YouTube channel.
mhm.
It's a little hard to find now. Till we get 100 subscribers, we can't choose our own name.
Oh,
So, and right now there's only one program on there called Finding the Sethian Soul. So you can actually Google Finding the Sethian Soul and you'll get a direct link.
okay. And I can share that
Oh, you're gonna,
I could share that when I put the video out
oh, okay.
of how people can find that. And I hope people will sign up for your channel. I mean, I think, for me personally, your teachings have just added so much to my life. And
Oh, it's mutual.
thank you.
If I had enough money, I would pay to do what I do.
That sounds like a pretty lucky job.
Yes, it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, and I do, I would recommend this Recentering Seth book to anyone who's interested, and also Psychic Psychology, Energy Skills for Life and Relationships is also a really, really good hands-on book of exercises that can help people begin their journey.
Which I wrote with Gloria Hemsher.
Yes. Yeah. Gloria is the co-author of this book. Your co-teacher, Gloria Hemsher. Yeah. So, well, I'm honored that you spent the time to talk to me, John, and I look forward to our next meeting. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.